You want to start writing, so let's not waste any time and jump right into it. The first step is actually something that I personally did wrong when I started writing. It happened to me without noticing, but looking back, it's something that I would avoid if I would start again. You want to start writing, and what will eventually happen is that you will tell someone about your writing. Let me tell you why this is not a good idea. When you start writing, you shouldn't look for recognition from your family and friends. What you should focus on instead is the page in front of you. What you should instead focus on is your story. The only recognition that you are looking for as a writer is the recognition from your audience. The problem with telling someone that you are writing is sometimes people will tell you that you are not capable of writing, and this is something that you want to avoid. Just don't tell anyone, just start. Now, the second step might sound obvious, but I think in this day and age with our limited attention span, it's not something that is easy. If you want to start writing, you should actually start reading. Make this a habit to read 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Even reading 1 page a day is fine as long as you read. Now, you might ask yourself what you should read, and you can answer this question yourself. You probably already have an idea what you want to write about, which genre you want to write in. It's exactly these kinds of books that you want to pick up and start reading. If you have no idea whatsoever what you should read, it's not really important that you read great books. You can also read books that are bad, actually. You can learn from both of them. And what I want you to do is, when reading, try to understand the story. Immerse yourself in the story. You will build your imagination, you will build your style, everything will improve when reading. Without the third step, it's basically impossible to start writing. It actually consists of the tools. And the tools are both psychological and physical. When you want to start writing, you can actually pick up a pen and a piece of paper and start. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Although when I started writing, I actually did the exact same thing. I picked up a pen, a fountain pen in that case, and a notebook and just started writing. The problem with this is that as soon as you finish a story, you have the problem of, how can I get this story into my computer? How can I edit this without writing it down again and again and again? I know the analog is cool, but we have digital devices on our hands that help us facilitate this process. You should use a computer. You can actually start writing with a very basic setup. What I personally use is Focuswriter. It's a free tool. I'm not affiliated with them, but I can highly recommend it. And I will tell you why. And this brings me to the psychological tools that you need. In today's day and age, the problem that almost every one of us faces is that we are distracted. We keep an advanced distraction device on our hands at every moment. So what you want to avoid when thinking about your tools is distraction. Focuswriter is very handy in this case. It's basically a plain window which you can type on. It is a distraction-free writing environment, and it's free, so use it to start writing. Alright, now we covered all the boring stuff, now it's time to let the magic happen. Now let's start to write. But there's a problem. What should you write about? The most important part of writing and stories is conflict. When trying to build conflict, think about, for example, of something that you want. And if you're not creative enough to think about what you want, think about what other people might want. You can see them all around you. You can see people wanting money. You can see people wanting fame. Think about one of those examples. Now you actually have half of what you need to create conflict. The other half is just as easy. You want to think about something that you want to avoid. You want to avoid a disease. You want to avoid falling victim to a crime. You want to avoid living in a zombie apocalypse. Now, to create conflict, just combine the two. For example, you want to win the lottery, but you want to avoid living in a zombie apocalypse. It's as easy as that. Think of another one and combine these two conflicts. With these two conflicts, you can actually start a short story. What it always will come down to is that you need conflict. Otherwise, people won't care about what you are writing. Okay, we reached the last step. But actually afterwards I will provide you with another step that's probably as important as the 5 steps that I've just provided you to start writing in 2026. Now, what could step 5 be? You already started writing, right? There's something very important missing. What you're missing is a goal. And what I would recommend to you is something that I actually did wrong. When I started writing, I jumped right into writing a novel. If you want to do so, feel free to do it. But what I recommend is start with a short story. This will enable you to learn all the basics of storytelling. All right, you have a goal. That's awesome. But you still find yourself procrastinating, right? You still find yourself not actually working towards your goal. And this is where a deadline might come in handy, right? So now, in order to find a deadline, look up on the internet in whatever language you are writing in and look for calls for submissions for your specific genre that you want to write in. Now highlight this deadline in your calendar and start writing that short story. Send it in. And what do you do when they not accept your story, which is highly likely? Repeat the process. Start another short story until you get your first short story published. Now, we covered all of the steps to start writing. There's another step that's as important as starting to write, because every step you take is useless if you quit. So the next step focuses on how to ensure that you never quit. Because at some point, it is highly likely that you find yourself in a situation that you want to quit writing. Maybe you send in your story to 10 calls for submissions. Maybe you spent months and months writing a novel, realizing that nobody wants to publish it. It's highly likely that this will happen. So what I want you to do is, after you started writing, try to give yourself answers to the question of why you should keep on writing. Maybe at some point you want to quit your job. That could be a reason to keep on writing. Maybe you want to write the next Lord of the Rings. Maybe you want to see your story being made into a film. These are all good reasons why you should keep on writing. Collect these reasons in your head, and as soon as that moment comes around when you want to quit writing, you have them at hand. You can just tell yourself, well, I want to quit, but there's still something that I need to do. There's still something why I should keep on writing. Even though I tell myself it should be better to quit, there's still something left that I need to do. It sounds easy. It's not. But you should be prepared. So try to prepare for this exact moment. And now, write.